The dust kicked up by the alien ships covered half of New Perth colony in a red haze. Ben Carter wiped his glasses and squinted through the settlement's main window at the 3 massive vessels that had landed without warning in their farming district. The ships looked like someone had taken normal spacecraft and covered them in spikes, bones, and what appeared to be skulls from various creatures. "Sir, they're requesting to speak with our leader," said Linda from the communications desk. Her voice shook slightly. "They say it's about sacred burial grounds." Ben sighed and adjusted his work shirt. He had been colony administrator for 8 years, dealing mostly with crop rotations and supply shipments. Alien diplomacy was not in his job description. "Tell them I'll meet them at the main gate in 10 minutes. The beings that emerged from the ship stood nearly 9 feet tall, with gray, scaly skin and eyes like black marbles. They wore armor made from what looked like bones and carried weapons that hummed with energy. The leader stepped forward, his massive frame casting a shadow over Ben despite the twin suns overhead. "I am Karn, war leader of the Drakmori Empire," the alien said through a translation device that made his voice sound like grinding metal. "You humans have built your settlement on the sacred resting place of our ancestors. This cannot stand." Ben looked around at the farmland surrounding the colony. Corn grew in neat rows and the settlers' children could be seen playing near the school building. "I'm sorry, but our surveys showed no signs of previous habitation. We had no idea this was a burial site." Karn's eyes narrowed. "Ignorance does not excuse desecration. The bones of our war heroes lie beneath your crops. Their spirits cry out for vengeance." "Look, I'm sure we can work something out," Ben said, trying to keep his voice steady. "Maybe we can relocate some of the farms or create a memorial area. We don't want any trouble." The other Drakmori warriors behind Karn began making sounds that might have been laughter, but sounded more like rocks grinding together. Karn raised his hand for silence. "You speak of compromise as if you have a choice in this matter," Karn said. "Throughout the galaxy, all species know the Drakmori way. When sacred ground is violated, honor demands trial by combat. Each side presents their deadliest creature. The winner claims the territory." Ben felt his stomach drop. "Trial by combat? Look, we're just farmers and miners here. We don't have any war creatures or battle beasts." "Then you die quickly," Karn replied matter-of-factly. "Unless you flee now and never return. Those are your options." Ben thought about the 50,000 people living in New Perth. Families who had traveled across the galaxy to build new lives. Children who had never seen Earth. Elderly settlers who couldn't survive another journey to find new homes. "How long do we have to prepare?" Ben asked. "By Drakmori law, 3 days," Karn said. "You will present your champion and we will present ours. The combat will be to the death. The spirits of our ancestors will guide the worthy to victory." "And if we win?" Ben asked. Karn's expression suggested he found the question amusing. "If your creature defeats ours, we will acknowledge your right to this land and never trouble you again. The Drakmori honor their agreements, and if we lose, your colony will be destroyed and this land will be returned to its proper purpose as a resting place for warriors," Karn said simply. "Your people may leave before the combat if they choose. We do not kill those who flee." Ben felt the weight of an impossible decision. Fight with no hope of winning or abandon everything they had built. "We need time to discuss this." "You have until sunset to decide," Karn said. "If you choose to fight, we will construct the arena tomorrow. Combat will take place on the 3rd day at midday." The Drakmori leader turned to go, then paused. "Human, what is your name?" "Ben Carter." "Ben Carter, you show courage by not fleeing immediately. This is good. It will make for a more honorable combat even if brief." Karn walked back toward his ship with his warriors following behind. Ben stood alone at the gate, watching the alien ships and trying to process what had just happened. The colony's entire future now depended on finding Earth's deadliest creature, and hoping it could somehow defeat whatever nightmare the Drakmori would bring to fight. He activated his communication device. "Linda, call an emergency meeting of all department heads. Also, get me a connection to Dr. Walsh in the biology section. And see if you can reach Earth Command, though I doubt they can get anyone here in time to help." As he walked back toward the administration building, Ben could see colonists gathering in small groups, pointing at the alien ships and talking in worried voices. Word was already spreading. Soon everyone would know that their peaceful farming colony was about to become a battleground. The worst part was that Ben had no idea what kind of creature they could possibly find to fight for them. The colony had some livestock, A few cats and dogs as pets and whatever wildlife had been brought for the ecological research station. None of it seemed like it could stand against an alien war beast from a species known for conquering planets. He stopped walking and looked up at the twin suns setting over New Perth. In 3 days, this might all be over. Either they would find some miracle, or 50,000 people would lose their homes to honor the grave sites of aliens who had died here thousands of years ago. Ben straightened his shoulders and continued toward the building. Impossible or not, he had to try. The colonists were depending on him to find a way out of this mess. Somewhere in their small collection of Earth life, there had to be something that could help them. He just hoped Dr. Walsh had some ideas, because he was completely out of them. Construction noise echoed across the settlement as the Drachmori built their arena. Dr. Amy Walsh pressed her face against the research station window, watching the aliens work with mechanical precision. They had brought their own materials, strange black metal that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. "It's massive," said her research assistant Dave Kim, joining her at the window. "The arena must be 200 meters across." Amy nodded grimly. She had spent the entire night going through Earth's biological database, searching for anything that might help them. The results were not encouraging. "Have you seen what we're up against yet?" "No, they're keeping their creature in one of their ships," Dave replied. "But I heard some of the other colonists talking. Apparently the Drachmori have used this trial by combat thing on dozens of worlds. They've never lost." Amy pulled up the research files on her tablet. "I've been reading about their expansion across the galaxy. Every time they want territory, they challenge the locals to send their deadliest creature against theirs. The Drachmori beast has killed everything from armored behemoths the size of buildings to swarm creatures that could strip flesh from bone in seconds." "What kind of monster are we dealing with?" Dave asked. Before Amy could answer, a deep roar shook the research station. Both humans rushed to the window and saw the Drachmori opening a massive cargo bay on their largest ship. Whatever was inside was making sounds like metal being torn apart mixed with the screams of dying animals. "There's your answer," Amy whispered. The creature that emerged from the ship defied easy description. It stood 8 feet tall on 4 powerful legs, its body covered in overlapping plates of natural armor that looked like black metal. 6 arms extended from its torso, each ending in claws that gleamed like polished knives. Its head was mostly mouth, filled with rows of teeth that seemed to move independently of each other. "Is that thing drooling acid?" Dave asked, pointing at the green liquid dropping from the creature's jaws. Amy checked her scanner readings. "The atmospheric readings are showing high levels of corrosive compounds." "Yes, I think it is." She watched as the drops of saliva hit the ground and immediately began eating small holes in the soil. The creature moved with surprising grace for its size, flowing rather than walking as the Drachmori handlers guided it toward a reinforced holding pen they had constructed at the edge of the arena. Even from their distant observation point, Amy could see the muscles rippling under its armored hide. "Dr. Walsh," came Ben Carter's voice over the communication system. "I need you at the emergency meeting in 5 minutes. Tell me you found something we can use." Amy looked at Dave, who shook his head sadly. They both knew the truth. Earth had plenty of dangerous animals, but nothing that could survive even 30 seconds against the nightmare they had just witnessed. "On my way," Amy replied, though she dreaded having to deliver the bad news. The meeting took place in the main conference room, with department heads from across the colony. Everyone looked tired and worried. Ben Carter sat at the head of the table, papers scattered in front of him showing evacuation schedules and transport capacity. "Dr. Walsh, what do we have to work with?" Ben asked directly. Amy activated the main display screen and began showing images of Earth animals. "Well, we could try a grizzly bear, but we don't have any in the colony. Tigers are powerful predators, but again, we don't have any. Sharks are deadly in water, but the arena will be on dry land. What about the animals we do have here?" asked Peter Williams from the agricultural section. Amy switched to a list of creatures currently living in New Perth. "We have cattle, horses, pigs, chickens, some cats and dogs, a few research specimens in the biology station including some snakes and spiders, and the wildlife preserve has a small collection of Earth animals for ecosystem studies." "What's in the wildlife preserve?" Ben asked. Amy pulled up the inventory. "Let's see. Some birds, a couple of wolves, a few deer, some smaller mammals including raccoons, possums, and a honey badger named Murphy that was sent here for behavioral studies." What about the wolves? Suggested Maria Santos from security. Wolves are predators, Amy shook her head. I've seen what we're up against. It's 8 feet tall, armored, has 6 arms with claws that can probably cut through steel, and spits acid. Even a pack of wolves wouldn't last a minute. The room fell silent as the reality of their situation sank in. They were being asked to send an earth creature to fight something that belonged in nightmares. How long do we have? Asked Dave. The combat is tomorrow at noon, Ben replied. The Drakmori finished their arena this morning. They're already moving their creature into position. Sir, said Linda from communications, who had been monitoring alien frequencies. I've been listening to Drakmori transmissions. They're treating this like entertainment. Word has spread to other Drakmori ships in the sector. They're coming to watch what they're calling the shortest trial combat in history. Ben rubbed his forehead. How many of our people have decided to evacuate? About half, Peter reported. The transports are loading continuously. But that still leaves 25,000 people who refuse to abandon their homes. Amy stared at the list of animals on her tablet. Somehow they had to choose one of these creatures to face the alien war beast. It felt like sending a lamb to slaughter, except even a lamb might last longer than most of their options. We have to pick something, Ben said quietly. Even if it's hopeless, we can't just surrender without trying. These people came here to build new lives. They deserve to see us fight for them. Amy looked around the table at the desperate faces of her colleagues and friends. Everyone was depending on her expertise to find a solution that probably didn't exist. She had spent her career studying Earth's most fascinating creatures, but nothing in her education had prepared her for this moment. Give me until tonight, she said finally. Let me go through everything one more time. Maybe there's something I've missed. Ben nodded. We'll meet again at sunrise. Dr. Walsh, I know this seems impossible, but you're our only hope. If anyone can find an answer, it's you. As the meeting broke up, Amy walked back toward the research station with Dave beside her. The Drakmori arena loomed ahead of them, dark and ominous against the setting suns. Tomorrow at noon, some poor Earth creature would walk into that arena and face a monster that had never known defeat. Amy just had to figure out which creature would die for the colony. Amy Walsh sat surrounded by scattered papers and empty coffee cups in her research lab. The digital clock on her desk showed 3 in the morning, and she had been reading for 8 straight hours. Every book, every research paper, every video file about Earth's predators painted the same picture. Nothing they had could possibly survive against the Drakmori war beast. She pulled up the video feed from the Wildlife Preserve's security cameras. Most of the animals were sleeping peacefully, unaware that one of them would soon be selected to die for the colony. The wolves lay curled together in their enclosure. The raccoons had made a mess of their food containers. And in the smallest habitat, Murphy the honey badger was digging holes along his fence line. Amy had been avoiding looking too closely at Murphy's file. A 35-pound mammal seemed like a cruel joke compared to the 8-foot armored monster in the Drakmori arena. But at 3 in the morning, with no other options left, she finally opened his research documentation. Honey badger, scientific name Mellivora capensis, she read aloud to the empty lab, known for exceptional tenacity and fearlessness. Documented cases of fighting animals many times their size, including lions, leopards, and venomous snakes. Natural immunity to many toxins, including cobra venom, bee stings, and various plant poisons. She scrolled through more files, finding videos of honey badgers in the wild. In one clip, a single honey badger drove off a pack of jackals from a kill site. In another, one escaped from multiple zoo enclosures using various problem-solving techniques. A third video showed a honey badger getting bitten by a puff adder, passing out for 2 hours, then waking up and killing the snake. They don't quit, Amy murmured, watching Murphy on the security feed as he continued his determined digging project. They literally don't know how to quit. Her computer chimed with an incoming message. Dave Kim had sent her additional research files he had found in the agricultural database. One caught her attention immediately. A toxicology report on honey badger saliva. Amy opened the file and began reading. Honey badgers, like many mammals, carried various bacteria in their mouths. But their particular mix of oral bacteria was unique, evolved to help them survive bites from venomous snakes. The bacteria could cause rapid infection in wounds and, in some cases, temporary paralysis in small animals. She sat back in her chair, staring at the screen. It wasn't much, but it was something. The Drakmori creature was alien biology. No one knew how it might react to Earth bacteria. It was a long shot, but it was the first real possibility she had found all night. Amy activated her communication device. "Dave, are you awake?" "I'm in the preserve office," came his tired reply. "Couldn't sleep. Figured I'd spend the time with the animals before." He didn't finish the sentence. "I need you to look at Murphy's file again," Amy said. "Specifically the behavioral analysis section. How does he react to larger predators?" She heard Dave typing on his computer. "According to the notes from the research station that sent him here, Murphy has never shown submission behavior to any creature regardless of size. When they introduced him to a tiger habitat during an enrichment exercise, Murphy immediately approached the tiger and began investigating it. The tiger backed away. Amy felt a spark of hope. What about his problem-solving abilities? Off the charts for his species. Murphy has escaped from every enclosure type the researchers tried. He can open simple locks, dig under barriers, climb over walls, and even figured out how to use tools to reach food." Dave paused. "Dr. Walsh, you're not seriously considering Murphy, are you?" Amy looked at the security feed showing the small badger still digging with relentless determination. "Dave, what do you know about the concept of prey drive in predators?" "Predators are programmed to chase things that run away from them," Dave replied. "It's instinctive. That's why you're supposed to stand your ground against bears and mountain lions instead of running." "Exactly. And what happens when a predator encounters something that doesn't run, doesn't submit, and doesn't back down?" Dave was quiet for a moment. "I guess they get confused. Their instincts don't know how to handle it." Amy stood up and began pacing around her lab. The Drakmori creature has spent its entire life fighting opponents that either flee in terror or attack aggressively. It's been trained to respond to fear and aggression, but what if it faces something that simply doesn't care? "Murphy doesn't care about anything," Dave admitted. "Yesterday he walked right up to the wolves' fence line and started digging. The wolves were going crazy, but Murphy just ignored them completely." Amy felt her excitement building. "Dave, I need you to run a simulation for me." Access the colony's biological modeling system and input Murphy's physical capabilities against the Drakmori creature's known specifications. "Dr. Walsh, a 35-pound badger against an 800-pound alien war beast? The computer is going to tell you Murphy gets flattened in about 2 seconds. Run the simulation but add one variable," Amy said. "Assume Murphy shows zero fear response and continues attacking regardless of injury. Factor in his natural flexibility, his digging claws, and the possibility that his bite could introduce unfamiliar bacteria into alien biology." She heard Dave typing furiously. After a few minutes, he spoke again, his voice filled with surprise. "The computer is showing some interesting results. If Murphy can avoid the initial attack and get close enough to bite, there's a small chance the bacteria could affect the alien's nervous system. But Dr. Walsh, this is all theoretical. We're talking about sending Murphy to certain death." Amy looked at the security feed again. Murphy had finished his digging project and was now methodically checking every corner of his enclosure, completely unbothered by the late hour or the chaos happening in the colony around him. "Dave, in all your research, have you ever seen Murphy show fear of anything?" "Never," Dave replied immediately. "Not once. The researchers who sent him here said he was the most fearless animal they had ever observed. They had to send him away because he kept disrupting their other experiments by investigating everything." Amy made her decision. "We're going to recommend Murphy as our champion. Dr. Walsh, are you sure about this? Ben Carter is going to think we've lost our minds." Amy saved her research files and began preparing her presentation. "Dave, every other animal we have will either freeze in terror or attack recklessly and die quickly. Murphy will do neither. He'll treat the Drakmori war beast exactly like he treats everything else in his life, as something mildly interesting that he needs to investigate." "And you think that gives him a chance?" Amy looked at the video feeds showing the other animals in the preserve. The wolves looked nervous even in their sleep. The deer were huddled together in the far corner of their enclosure. Only Murphy appeared completely untroubled by the alien presence in the colony. "I think Murphy is the only Earth creature who won't be intimidated by something just because it's bigger than he is," Amy said. "And sometimes the biggest advantage you can have is simply not knowing you're supposed to be afraid." The sunrise meeting did not go well. When Amy explained her choice of Murphy the honey badger as their champion, the silence in the conference room stretched for nearly a full minute. Ben Carter stared at her as if she had suggested they surrender immediately. "Dr. Walsh," Ben said carefully, "are you telling me that our best option is a 35-pound mammal?" "I'm telling you that Murphy is the only animal we have that won't be paralyzed by fear when he sees the Drakmori creature," Amy replied. "Every other animal will either flee or attack blindly and die quickly. Murphy will assess the situation and respond accordingly." Peter Williams from Agriculture shook his head. "This is insane. We're sending a badger to fight a monster that has conquered dozens of worlds." "What choice do we have?" Amy asked. "The wolves might last 30 seconds. Murphy might last longer because he won't panic." Ben rubbed his temples. "The colonists who stayed are expecting us to put up a real fight. When they see Murphy walk into that arena, they're going to think we've given up." "Maybe that's what we should do," suggested Maria Santos. "Tell the Drakmori we forfeit and evacuate everyone who's still here." "No," Ben said firmly. "We made a commitment to these people. We told them we'd fight for their homes. I won't break that promise." He looked at Amy. "Dr. Walsh, are you absolutely certain Murphy is our best option?" Amy thought about the night she had spent researching, about all the videos she had watched, about Murphy's complete fearlessness in the face of creatures much larger than himself. "Yes, I am." "Then Murphy it is," Ben said. "God help us all." 3 hours later, the arena was surrounded by crowds. Drakmori ships had been arriving all morning, bringing warriors from across the sector to witness what their communications were calling the final humiliation of the human colony. The DXZER, alien spectators filled temporary seating structures that towered above the arena walls. On the human side, the remaining colonists gathered in smaller groups, many carrying the few possessions they could take if they needed to evacuate quickly. Children stayed close to their parents, sensing the tension in the air even if they didn't fully understand what was happening. Amy stood near the arena entrance, holding Murphy's transport carrier. Through the ventilation holes, she could see the honey badger calmly grooming himself, apparently unbothered by the noise and activity around him. "He seems relaxed," Dave observed, standing beside her with monitoring equipment to track Murphy's vital signs during the combat. "That's what worries everyone else," Amy replied. "They think he doesn't understand what's about to happen." Ben Carter approached, looking pale but determined. "Dr. Walsh, the Drakmori are ready to begin. They're asking if we want any time for pre-combat rituals or ceremonies." Amy looked at the carrier where Murphy had finished grooming and was now sniffing curiously at the air holes. "Murphy doesn't need rituals. He's ready whenever they are." The arena entrance gates opened with a deep rumbling sound. Amy carried Murphy's carrier to the designated release point, while Ben and the other colony leaders took their positions in the observation area. Across the arena, the Drakmori were preparing to release their creature from its holding pen. Karn's voice echoed through the arena's sound system. "By ancient law and sacred honor, we gather to determine the rightful ownership of this contested land. Each side has chosen their champion. May the worthy triumph and the weak perish." Amy knelt beside Murphy's carrier and opened the door. The honey badger emerged slowly, taking a moment to orient himself in the unfamiliar environment. He looked around the arena with mild interest, apparently unimpressed by the thousands of alien spectators or the ceremonial importance of the moment. On the opposite side of the arena, the Drakmori released their war beast. The creature emerged from its pen with a roar that shook dust from the arena walls. It stood 8 feet tall, its armored hide gleaming in the sunlight, 6 arms ending in claws that looked sharp enough to cut through steel. Acid dripped from its massive jaws, leaving smoking holes in the arena floor. The alien spectators cheered with approval. The human colonists fell silent, many covering their children's eyes. The size difference between the two creatures was so extreme it looked like a joke rather than a combat. Murphy, meanwhile, had noticed some interesting scents near the arena wall and was investigating them with single-minded focus. He appeared to be completely unaware that he had an opponent. The war beast noticed Murphy and let out another thunderous roar, designed to strike terror into its enemy's heart. Murphy glanced up briefly, seemed to categorize the sound as uninteresting, and returned to his investigation of the wall. In the Drakmori seating area, confused murmurs began to spread. The war beast roared again, louder this time, and began advancing toward Murphy with slow, menacing steps. Its claws scraped against the arena floor, leaving deep gouges in the stone. Murphy finished examining the wall and turned his attention to a small pile of debris near the center of the arena. He began methodically moving pieces of rubble, apparently looking for something specific. The approaching war beast might as well have been invisible. "What is it doing?" Amy heard one of the Drakmori warriors ask in their translated language. "Perhaps it is performing, some kind of pre-combat ritual," another replied. Uncertainly, the war beast reached the center of the arena and loomed over Murphy, who was still busy with his debris investigation. The creature raised all 6 arms, claws extended, preparing to end the combat with a single devastating strike. At that moment, Murphy discovered what he had been looking for, a small beetle that had been hiding under one of the rocks. He picked up the insect and examined it with scientific curiosity, completely ignoring the massive predator standing directly above him. The war beast hesitated, apparently confused by Murphy's total lack of fear response. In its experience, prey animals either fled or fought back when confronted. Murphy was doing neither. He was simply going about his business as if the war beast didn't exist. Amy watched from the sidelines, hardly daring to breathe. This was the moment that would determine everything. Either Murphy's fearlessness would confuse the alien creature long enough for him to find an advantage, or the war beast would recover from its confusion and end the combat immediately. The crowd of spectators, both alien and human, waited in complete silence as the honey badger finished examining his beetle, gently placed it on the ground away from the combat area, and finally looked up at the massive creature standing over him. Murphy's reaction was exactly what Amy had hoped for, and exactly what everyone else had feared. He looked at the war beast with the same mild interest he had shown the beetle, apparently categorizing it as just another creature that happened to be in his vicinity. Then he did something that made the entire arena hold its breath. Murphy approached the war beast and began investigating it, the same way he had investigated the wall and the pile of debris. He walked around the creature's legs, sniffed at its armored hide, and showed absolutely no recognition that he was supposed to be afraid of the thing that could kill him, with a single swipe of its claws. The war beast, trained for a lifetime of combat, had no idea how to respond to an opponent that treated it like a mildly interesting rock formation. The war beast stood frozen in confusion as Murphy completed his casual inspection tour around its legs. The honey badger seemed particularly interested in the creature's armored belly plates, sniffing and occasionally prodding with his nose as if trying to understand how they were constructed. In the Drakmori seating area, Karn leaned forward with growing puzzlement. "What manner of creature shows no fear of the Voidstalker?" he asked his warriors. "Perhaps it is defective," suggested one warrior, "brain damaged from birth." "Or perhaps," said another, "it is more dangerous than it appears." The Voidstalker, as Amy now knew the war beast was called, tried a different approach. It lowered its massive head and growled directly at Murphy, a sound like grinding stone that had terrorized creatures across a dozen worlds. The growl was so deep and menacing that several human children in the audience began crying. Murphy looked up at the sound with mild interest, rather like someone hearing an unusual bird call. He studied the Voidstalker's massive jaws for a moment, apparently noting the rows of razor-sharp teeth and the acid dripping between them. Then he did something that made Amy's heart stop. Murphy reached up and gently touched the creature's lower jaw with one paw, as if testing whether it was real. The Voidstalker jerked back instinctively, startled by the contact. In its entire combat career, no opponent had ever voluntarily touched it. The creature's training protocols had no response programmed for this situation. It took a step backward, uncertain how to proceed. Murphy, having confirmed that the jaw was indeed real, lost interest and wandered toward another area of the arena. He had spotted what appeared to be a small hole near the eastern wall and wanted to investigate whether anything interesting lived inside it. The alien spectators began murmuring in their various languages. This was not how trial by combat was supposed to proceed. The human champion should have been dead within seconds of the combat's start. Instead, the mighty Voidstalker was backing away from a creature no larger than a house cat. "This is unprecedented," Amy heard one Drakmori commander say through her translation device. "The Voidstalker has never retreated from any opponent." The war beast seemed to realize it was losing face in front of the gathered crowd. It roared again, louder this time, and charged toward Murphy with all 6 arms extended. This was the moment Amy had been dreading. Even if Murphy's fearlessness could confuse the creature, surely he couldn't survive a direct attack. Murphy heard the approaching footsteps and turned around just as the Void Stalker reached him. The creature swung its massive claws in a sweeping attack designed to crush its opponent instantly, but Murphy, with the reflexes that had kept honey badgers alive in the African wilderness for thousands of years, simply wasn't there when the claws arrived. He had rolled to the side with casual ease, as if avoiding the attack required no more effort than stepping around a puddle. The Void Stalker's claws struck the arena floor where Murphy had been standing, sending up sparks and leaving deep gouges in the stone. Murphy examined the claw marks with scientific interest, apparently impressed by the creature's digging capabilities. He looked up at the Void Stalker with what might have been approval, then returned his attention to the hole he had been investigating. The war beast, now thoroughly frustrated, tried again. It spun around and launched another attack, this time using its powerful tail as a weapon. The appendage whistled through the air with enough force to crush a small vehicle. Murphy dodged again, this time by simply dropping flat to the ground. The tail swept over him harmlessly while he continued his examination of the hole. He had discovered that something had been digging here recently, and he wanted to determine whether it was still in residence. The Void Stalker's attack pattern became increasingly frantic as it tried every combat technique in its arsenal. It slashed with its claws, snapped with its massive jaws, and tried to stomp on Murphy with its powerful legs. Each attack missed by inches as Murphy went about his business with supreme indifference to the death machine trying to kill him. "He's not even trying to fight back," Dave whispered to Amy. "He's just avoiding the attacks while doing his own thing." Amy nodded, watching Murphy's casual defensive movements with growing amazement. Honey badgers evolved to survive attacks from lions and leopards. Their whole survival strategy is based on being impossible to pin down, while they figure out how to counterattack. The war beast's frustration reached a breaking point. It let out a roar of pure rage and charged at Murphy with reckless abandon, abandoning all technique in favor of brute force. This was exactly what Amy had been hoping for. Murphy, who had been patiently waiting for the creature to make a mistake, suddenly shifted from defensive to offensive. As the Void Stalker lunged toward him, Murphy darted forward and sank his teeth into the creature's front leg. Just below the armored plating where the skin was softer, the bite itself wouldn't have seemed significant to most observers. After all, Murphy was tiny compared to his opponent. But honey badgers had evolved powerful jaws designed to crack bones and hold on to struggling prey, much larger than themselves. More importantly, Murphy's mouth carried the same bacteria that Amy had discovered in her late-night research. The Void Stalker shrieked in pain and surprise, a sound unlike any it had made before. It tried to shake Murphy off, but the honey badger held on with grim determination, his jaws locked onto the alien flesh. The creature spun in circles, trying desperately to dislodge its tiny tormentor. "Something's wrong with it," Amy observed, watching the Void Stalker's movements become increasingly uncoordinated. "Look at how it's stumbling." The alien creature's leg was beginning to go numb where Murphy had bitten it. The unfamiliar earth bacteria in the honey badger's saliva was interacting with the Void Stalker's nervous system in ways that neither species had evolved to handle. What should have been a minor wound was becoming a major problem. Murphy finally released his grip and dropped to the ground, immediately resuming his investigation of the hole as if nothing had happened. The Void Stalker tried to pursue him but stumbled, its wounded leg no longer responding properly to commands from its brain. The arena fell silent as the mighty war beast that had never known defeat began to sway on its feet, trying to understand why its body was no longer obeying its commands. Murphy, meanwhile, had discovered that the hole contained a small family of local insects, which he began observing with the fascination of a natural scientist. For the first time in its combat career, the Void Stalker was beginning to experience something it had never felt before: fear. Not of Murphy specifically, but of the growing realization that something was very wrong with its own body. The leg Murphy had bitten was completely numb now, and the numbness was spreading. Murphy finished his examination of the insects and turned his attention back to the increasingly unsteady war beast. He approached it again with the same casual interest he had shown earlier, apparently ready to conduct a more thorough investigation of this fascinating new creature he had discovered. The Void Stalker, seeing Murphy approach, tried to back away. For the first time in the trial by combat, the mighty champion of the Drakmori Empire was retreating from the tiny earth creature, that didn't know it was supposed to be afraid. The mighty Void Stalker collapsed 20 minutes later, its nervous system completely overwhelmed by the foreign bacteria from Murphy's bite. The honey badger was examining some interesting scratches on the arena wall when the 8-foot war beast that had terrorized entire worlds simply fell over and stopped moving. Murphy glanced at the fallen creature with mild interest, determined it was no longer worth investigating, and returned to his wall scratches. The arena remained in complete silence for nearly 5 minutes as thousands of spectators tried to process what they had just witnessed. Karn was the first to speak, his voice carrying clearly through the arena's sound system. The trial by combat is complete. The human champion has achieved victory. He paused, as if the words were difficult to say. By ancient law and sacred honor, the Drakmori acknowledge human ownership of this territory. The human colonists erupted in cheers, though most still seemed stunned by what had happened. Amy rushed into the arena to collect Murphy, who greeted her with the same casual indifference he had shown the Void Stalker. She gently picked him up and carried him toward the exit while medical teams examined the fallen war beast. "Is it dead?" Ben Carter asked as Amy approached the colony leadership group. "Unconscious," Amy replied, checking Murphy for injuries and finding none. "The bacterial infection should wear off in a few hours." Murphy's bite wasn't meant to kill something that large, just to disable it temporarily. Ben shook his head in amazement. A 35-pound badger just defeated the most feared war beast in the galaxy. Murphy defeated the most feared war beast in the galaxy, Amy corrected. And he doesn't even realize he did anything unusual. As if to prove her point, Murphy began struggling in her arms, apparently wanting to return to his investigation of the arena's various interesting features. Amy set him down inside his carrier, where he immediately curled up for a nap. Exhausted by all the excitement, Karn approached the human group, his massive frame casting a shadow over them despite his obvious uncertainty. "Dr. Walsh," he said, having learned Amy's name during the pre-combat preparations. "I must ask you about your creature." "What would you like to know?" Amy replied. "The Void Stalker has never been defeated," Karn said. "It has killed warriors from dozens of species, creatures that stood 3 times taller and were armed with natural weapons far superior to your Murphy. How did such a small animal achieve victory?" Amy looked at the sleeping honey badger in his carrier. "Murphy won because he didn't know he was supposed to lose. He treated your war beast exactly like he treats everything else in his life, as something mildly interesting that he needed to investigate." "But surely he understood the danger," Karn insisted. "The Void Stalker's roar alone has caused enemy creatures to die of fright. Murphy has probably heard scarier sounds from the garbage disposal in the research station kitchen," Amy replied. "He doesn't have a fear response to things just because they're bigger than he is." Karn was quiet for a long moment, processing this information. "Dr. Walsh, what other creatures does your species possess?" Amy exchanged glances with Ben Carter, suddenly realizing the implications of the question. "Well, Murphy is actually considered one of the less dangerous animals from Earth." The Drakmori leader's eyes widened slightly. "Less dangerous?" "Oh yes," Amy said, warming to the subject. "We have creatures called saltwater crocodiles that can grow to 20 feet long and bite with more force than your war beast. We have spiders whose venom can kill a human in 15 minutes. We have bears that weigh 1,500 pounds. We have sharks that can detect a drop of blood in the ocean from miles away." "And humans live alongside these creatures?" Karn asked, his voice filled with what might have been horror. "Some humans actively seek them out for recreation," Ben added helpfully. "It's called wildlife tourism." Amy continued the impromptu biology lesson. "We have snakes that can kill an elephant with a single bite. We have jellyfish that are essentially floating death. We have insects that carry diseases capable of wiping out entire populations. And then there's Australia." "Australia?" Karn asked weakly. "A continent where nearly everything is actively trying to kill you," Amy explained cheerfully. "Humans live there by choice. They even have a sport where they swim in waters filled with creatures that can kill them in dozens of different ways." Karn took a step backward. "And your species considers the creature that defeated the Void Stalker to be harmless?" "Well, Murphy can be a bit cranky if he's hungry," Amy said. "But mostly he just wants to investigate things and take naps." The Drakmori leader looked around at his warriors, who had been listening to this conversation with growing alarm. "We must return to our ships immediately," Karn announced. This planet is clearly too dangerous for Drakmori habitation. 3 months later, Amy received a formal communication from the Galactic Coalition headquarters. The document, signed by representatives from dozens of species, officially classified humans as a Class 9 biological hazard species due to their casual cohabitation with creatures of unreasonable lethality. The classification meant that no species in the galaxy was permitted to challenge humans to trial by combat, attack human settlements without extreme provocation, or attempt to colonize worlds where humans had already established residence. Several species had formally requested that humans be banned from bringing Earth creatures to galactic trade stations. "Listen to this part," Ben Carter said, reading from the official document during a colony staff meeting. It says, "Humans appear to have evolved alongside predators so dangerous that their domestic companion animals are capable of defeating trained war beasts. Their casual attitude toward lethal creatures suggests either complete fearlessness or catastrophic judgment impairment. Either possibility makes them unsuitable for standard diplomatic protocols." Amy laughed, looking through the window at Murphy's enclosure, where the honey badger was engaged in his daily routine of digging holes and investigating anything that moved. Murphy would be flattered to know he's been classified as a diplomatic weapon. "The Drakmori have established a formal embassy on the edge of our solar system," Dave reported from the communications desk. "They've requested permission to study what they call human survival techniques and want to know if we would be willing to trade some of our less dangerous creatures for advanced technology." "They want to trade for Earth animals?" Amy asked. "Apparently they think anything that can survive on the same planet as Murphy must have incredible defensive capabilities," Dave replied. "They've specifically requested chickens which they believe must be armored warbirds based on human dietary preferences." Ben shook his head. "We've gone from being a small farming colony to being the most feared species in the galaxy, and it's all because of one honey badger who doesn't know he's supposed to be afraid of things." Amy glanced at Murphy, who had discovered a new type of beetle in his enclosure and was examining it with his usual scientific curiosity. He remained completely oblivious to his role in revolutionizing human-alien relations, focused entirely on determining whether the beetle was interesting enough to warrant further investigation. "Should we tell the other human colonies about our new galactic reputation?" Dave asked. Ben considered this. "Let's keep it quiet for now. I have a feeling that if Earth Command finds out we're considered the most dangerous species in the galaxy because of our wildlife, they're going to want to do something official about it. And knowing our government, they'll probably try to weaponize house cats." Amy nodded in agreement, watching Murphy lose interest in the beetle and wander off to take another nap. The honey badger, who had accidentally established humanity's reputation as a species of terrifying predator tamers, settled down in his favorite sunny spot, completely unaware that he had changed the course of galactic history. In the end, Murphy had achieved something that no human diplomat or military force had ever managed. He had earned their species' respect throughout the galaxy, simply by being himself and not caring about things that everyone else thought he should be afraid of. And if the rest of the galaxy wanted to believe that humans were too dangerous to fight, well, that seemed like Murphy's problem to solve. After all, he was the one who had started it by refusing to be impressed by an 8-foot warbeast with acid for saliva. Murphy, as always, didn't care what anyone thought about it.